This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. What I'm looking at today is the third season of Netflix's Squid Game. And this is something that was a little bit hard to find a way in a sense that clearly the first two seasons of Squid Game thematically are an analogy for capitalism, American capitalism in particular, which is to say it's fairly brutal, fairly mean-spirited, and has a tendency to turn people against each other. And the third season, allegedly the final season, though I doubt it, and I'll explain why later, continues in that trend, but with a difference. By my reckoning, one of the more important underlying themes of the third season is beyond American-style capitalism, and it goes into corruption, and how American-style capitalism is not only untenable in the long run, but in the short run, it destroys people. It turns them against each other. It makes them do things that are entirely not in their best interests, which, as I said, is an interesting thing to build a series around. If you recall, in the first two seasons, Seong Gi-hun re-entered the Squid Game in an effort to undermine it. Now the thing is, like American politics, capitalism is uniquely resistant to change. Change that would even improve it, in fact. And that change has to be forced upon it. It will not accept change, particularly change that alienates or somehow disempowers the elites that run things. In the third season, instead of him working to undermine this game, which he's doing, but it becomes less important than targeting the person who he believes undermined his rebellion. And on one level that's fair, but on another level it's missing the point. In the sense that the person who didn't bring back the ammunition so that they could help fight against the people running the game was just a person who was afraid, a person overwhelmed by the circumstances that surrounded him. And that Seong Gi-hun wasn't. It's more due to the fact that he has been in the game longer. Remember, this is his second visit. So he has become accustomed to its machinations, though not everyone else has. And that he went out of his way to target this particular individual speaks to me about the corrupting influence of American-style capitalism. Which is to say, it makes you like it. It corrupts. It rots from within. And that is a theme that runs, by my reckoning, throughout the entire third season. Even the Squid Game itself begins to break down because you have one of the players, a woman, I don't recall her name, but she's working to free someone else for reasons that aren't entirely clear. And in fact, when you learn what those reasons are, I'm not sure they make all that much sense. But Squid Game is a very human series, which is to say people do things that don't always strike you as logical, but within the context of a person, you can see how they come to that decision. And so this woman is attacking the Squid Game from within. Once again, corruption. Corruption of the very institution that is destroying these people. It is a fascinating series. And to look at it in this way, I think brings added layers to it. Because, as I said during one of my trailer reactions for Squid Game 3, you know how this is going to end. But that was without the benefit of hindsight. Having seen it, I think it doesn't end. Not in the sense that you might think it does. Once again, it evokes those themes of American-style capitalism, which is to say, it comes into a place, devastates the population for the most part. The elites do fine, but most people do not. It devastates the population and it moves to somewhere else. So In the third season, mild spoilers, the Squid Game moves to the United States. And this is interesting also because there's been talk for quite a while now that David Fincher, director of Fight Club, Seven, Alien 3, and many others, was going to direct a reboot of Squid Game. This works in the sense that it doesn't have to be a reboot. It could be an entirely new series of Squid Game set in the United States, which would make a lot of sense. And by the way, did anyone notice Cate Blanchett at the end of this series? It struck me as the strangest thing. You see Cate Blanchett playing the role of there's a name for the person, the solicitor, the person who held the game in South Korea in train stations. You have Cate Blanchett playing that role, and you have the front man watching her as she does it, implying strongly that the Squid Game does not end. The Squid Game is, in a sense, eternal. The Squid Game is the battle between American-style capitalism and a more progressive, a more caring type of governing policy. And what I found fascinating was the invasive nature of American-style politics, which I already alluded to. But just the idea that it doesn't end, it just moves on and corrupts. It just keeps doing it. And that's fascinating to me. Squid Game 3, for me, is not an ending, but a beginning. So what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like, follow, or buy me a coffee.